I'm not afraid or intimidated. And I'm still talking. Hello, it's April 2022. And I know over the years I've highlighted people like Danial, Holtzclaw, and Stephen Avery, and shared even links to their story, these documentaries and everything else, and their wrongful convictions. And there's also been a few other people, actually, but one in particular person that I always had in mind, but I forgot his name. And his name is Leslie Vass, V-A-S-S. And I'll leave a link to an interview of his in the description box. And I came across this interview that was apparently done in 2020, and I've mentioned many times that we hear about people being exonerated and everything else, but we really never hear their story afterwards. Now, although this interview really doesn't focus so much on his emotional state, his mental state, he does talk about his life after being exonerated. And he was to have served 20 years for a crime that he never committed, and even being exonerated 10 years later. So I believe he was convicted in 1975, and he was exonerated like 10 years later, so around, I think it was 1986. And it was another clear-cut case of wrongful conviction. And not only that, but we hear from time and time again how everyone involved, the judges, prosecutors, lawyers, the defense lawyers, and everyone are all aware that this person is innocent, and they still go ahead. And when you look at, I know the numbers, more than 60% of people convicted of anything are actually innocent. It's mind-numbing. But most of these convictions don't entail life sentences and stuff, which grabs people's emotions, and people will care for that moment and then kind of dismiss it because it's like whatever. And I've said in my previous video how everyone can point the finger, say, to politicians or celebrity types or whatever, and say they knew of all this injustice but did nothing. They're just as guilty. Well, as I said, society's just in the same boat. Society knows of all these injustices and do nothing. A lot of people say, well, what can I do? What can we do? Well, you want to do a protest by rubber for nothing, so at least try for something that you can actually succeed in or potentially succeed in. I digress. And if I seem a little agitated, it's because I am. I ended up unexpectedly watching this almost 1 hour interview, and it just brought back a lot of memories. And there was something actually that he had said with regards to the person who actually committed a crime was an informant of the police. In order to protect the informant, they pinned it on him. And before I get into that catching my attention with regards to the female who all my troubles revolved around, I'm going to tell you just briefly about his story real quick in a nutshell. So he was a teenager. I think he said he was 17 at the time, and his mother asked him to go to the store, so he did. And it was a small community store in Baltimore, and went in, whatever he had to get for his mother, came back out, and then that's when he was arrested. The cop that was there put a gun to his head and arrested him. And somewhere along the way, he found out that he was being arrested for robbing the store, which was a drugstore, but it was kind of like had shopping in there and all sorts of stuff. And he knew the owners of the store. It was a small community. Everybody knew everyone. And so, long story short, he made the mistake, both him and his mother made the mistake of relying on the lawyer that they retained. And as soon as I started hearing that part of the story, I just like, yep, I know where this is going to go. And the lawyer that they retained basically threw him under the bus, because the lawyer knew that this person, Leslie Vass, was being put, with no criminal record priors or anything, was being put on the conveyor belt of conviction. And I mean, I've actually talked about this a little bit in depth and everything else. And so long story short, during the trial, he finds out that it wasn't that alleged robbery. It was something that happened a year ago in a different city. He was a teenager. He didn't go into any other city. So anyway, they pinned this on him, and then while he was in jail, he did some schooling, a lot of schooling apparently, and even learned some paralegal thing in law, and he started advocating for himself. And I've said before, you're on your own with regards to the past 2 years with the old current Woodward events or anything. You can't rely on anyone. You have to do it yourself. And so he ended up getting exonerated. They found a picture of the third person. There was apparently three adults that robbed the place, and they got two of the three. They pinned the third guy as him, and then they got a picture of this third guy, or an actual photo. They showed it to some alleged witness, and they're like, "Yeah, that's positive ID," and they linked it all, and completely exonerated Leslie Vass. So this is where the story kind of, I don't know if you want to say, kind of saddened me for him, as well as for the realization for myself. So now we're looking, he's in the late 80s, trying to rebuild his life. And he did more schooling, and ever since he even exonerated, everything was supposed to be expunged and all this other nonsense. He's 62 now. When he was interviewed, 2020, so he's 64 now. Can't get a job because this keeps popping up, and nobody cares. Potential employers or places that he has applied to reflect his education and career history and so forth, they don't care. He has to be bonded. The bonding firms don't care. It shows up and that's it. They have a policy. And he started talking about all this, and a few times he got choked up. And I'm just trying to think how to say this. I realized what I already know, that my life is destroyed regardless if I have a pardon or anything. I'm never going to be able to, for example, teach again, law, or anything, or even working in the mental health industry, which, I'm not an advocate for it, but I did help people, but not, well, anyway, I've talked about this stuff before. So I was just, watch that video of him, and realized the rest of my life is all because of the human garbage that were involved with my case. And I say that because I'm not afraid. I'm not going to be intimidated. I remember running into for example, my first lawyer that I fired, and a few other people that were tied to the case, and running into them. They're the ones that had to put their head down. They couldn't even look me in the eye and say hello. I'm the only one that I was able to walk with my head proper. And I'm not, again, I'm not intimidated. And somebody might say, well, you have, at least you're not in prison. Well, you want to know something? I am in prison. I'm in prison, a life sentence. I'll never escape it. So whether I'm sitting here in my vehicle or sitting by a river out in the wilderness or whatever, I'm still in prison. So I don't care. That doesn't intimidate me. And if somebody wants to, in slang terms, take me out, so be it. My problems are over. But I'm not intimidated. I fought all those years right to the end. And I'm still enduring the aftermath of everything. All because of human garbage. And these people don't care. And other people peripheral to that could have helped. My life is, it is what it is. I mentioned earlier how something that he had said with that, the informant actually had committing the crime. And I'm tying that in with the female. And I've showed in videos screenshots of where it says that I had no criminal record, and then after it shows her, the female, and she has this, apparently this long history of prostitution and making accusations against men. And I remember around when all this was still fresh and happening, I'm going to back up for a second. Many people that knew me when all this happened asked, how did those two former human garbage police officers know where I was? She said she was texting her sister, so I was texting a buddy back home, my province of origin. And I remember talking to a few people, wondering if she's some sort of, maybe it's not the best descriptive, informant for the police. She had said to me just before all this happened, she knew the one former human garbage police officer. He testified that he also knew this female. So what, I'm lost for words. But they were on a mission. Because you have to see, understand, we are, when everyone is complying and no one's breaking laws, they make harder and more difficult laws. And if they want to pin something on someone, you just make it up. Fortunately, when I took over the trial after my second lawyer, they didn't anticipate my having working knowledge of law. So I didn't make it easy for them, and I filed everything. Everything that I've shared online is in public domain, filed with the courts. So I don't have anything to worry about with that. And anyone can go look up who the criminal trial judge was, Bill Cummings, who had no previous criminal law experience, sat on some sort of committee and had ties to the Calgary police. Gee, I wonder why he got chosen for that. Look up who those two F-tards were. Excuse my language, but that escalated things beyond stupid. And when they realized that everything went sideways, what did they do? Like all those cowards do, is feared for my life, testifying there's nothing to fear, and made up allegedly obstruction and assaulting them. And then during testimony, well, I wasn't verbally abusive, I wasn't aggressive, described me as extremely cooperative. And actually at the point when they entered the location, it was asked of them, could have I just left? And they said, yeah, I could have. There's a video, I think it's something that I consent to all this. But see, I was on my own mission, find out what's going on, clear my name, and say, hey, this is what I know what's going on. So this all leads up to that female being used to set me up. By whom? Well, I'll leave that for you to figure out, conclude on your own. And you know, it really doesn't matter to me at this point, because just like with Leslie Vass, he's having a hard time trying to live with the wrongful convictions, and he was exonerated. Mind you, they did compensate him, but still, he's still living in his aftermath, and people don't seem to get that. And it'd be really interesting to hear him being interviewed, but more on what's going on inside his mind. How's he coping? How's he dealing? You kind of get little tastes of it here and there through this interview, but this is the world that we live in. And you know, I reflect back on my life, and I've never ever been one to, I know there's a lot of people who complain, oh, you know, bad family, my parents, this, that. I've never in my life done that, nor am I going to do that now. I'm just sharing my feelings, my thoughts, whatever. But when you have someone in a parent position that goes out of their way, and you don't even have to be in their life, and somehow you get dragged into whatever nonsense that they're in the middle of, there's a big difference between someone just saying, you know, I had bad parents and this is why my life is. That's just an excuse. And yeah, you know, I've had the gamut of a bad childhood, rough childhood, and just think about how I came into this world. But I worked hard. You see, if you're going to blame someone, say parents, for the wrongs and the hardships that you've had to go through, and even if your life sucks now, if you accomplish something, you'd have to give them credit as well. Something to think about. But I've never made excuses, but I'm just reflecting my whole life dealing with nonsense imposed from other people, things that completely sideswipe you. You don't even, like this whole thing in December of 2012. You can't even prepare for that. You can't even brace for that, because it's just like, what? And how many other so-called investigations that or other people, even you watching right now, perfect clean record. You don't do anything. There's an investigation somewhere on the file about you because somebody said something. And it's really easy to do now because we have all this social justice snowflakes and hurt feelings and everything else and people being canceled. I mean, it's even easier now. You don't think injustice can happen to you. You're just one step away from it and you don't even know it. I didn't see it coming in December of 2012. I just all of a sudden realized, wow, my life had completely went upside down. And then I had to try to figure out a way to deal with it, with no help from anyone because no one, again, wanted to talk to me. And that led me down the path of feminism and why I am an anti-feminist. The feminist has nothing to do with what people think. Feminism, just like the incel movement for men, is about the beta and omega males and females wanting to be equal to the alpha males and females. And that's it in a nutshell. And I've talked to people who speak out against feminists, world-renowned people, and they agree. Anyway, what's the point of all this? Well, perhaps to share Leslie Vass's story, so you get to know his story, even after being exonerated. And just sharing a little bit more about myself and my thoughts. So take what you will from all this. And so right now, kind of feeling in a bit of a low, sad, frustrated, bitter moment. It's a shame that we live in a world where we have to be afraid of human garbage. But I'm not afraid or intimidated. And I'm still talking. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. There is nothing that I can ever do that will satisfy the sorrow, the pain, the suffering, the frustration, and bitterness that I've endured all these years. It is said, living well is the best revenge. However, there is nothing that I can see that I can do that would make me truly happy inside again.